I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I now would like to welcome Senior Charlene Lam, who will lead us in our opening prayer.
In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Loving God, we ask for blessings on all those who have served their country in the armed forces, with deep gratitude for their service and sacrifice. We ask for healing for the veterans who have been wounded in body and soul in conflicts around the globe. We pray especially for the young men and women who are coming home with injured bodies and traumatized spirits. Bring solace to them, O Lord. May we pray for them when they cannot pray. We ask for an end to wars and the dawning of a new era of peace as a way to honor all the veterans of past wars. Have mercy on all our veterans. Bring peace to their hearts and peace to the regions where they fought. Give us all the creative vision and courage to create a world which moves to affirming the life of every human being, bringing a desire for peace to the hearts of all of your children, so that one day we may move beyond all wars. O Prince of Peace, hear our prayer. Amen. In the name of the Father, and Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you for those intros, Maeve. I think we can get started right with the first question. Maeve, do you want to lead us off?
Yes. So I was wondering, how did your time at Northwest prepare you for your future?
Katherine, do you want to go first?
Sure. I would say that the biggest takeaway I took from Northwest was the commitment of our teachers, our faculty, our support staff, and our fellow students and even parents to support every single student there in many ways, both inside the school, outside the school, on the playing fields, during the 4 years that I was there and long after I graduated. I don't think you get that in a lot of places. And Northwest had a way of bringing together talented, caring people to really reach out to kids on an individual basis. And that's what happened in my life. And so when I left Northwest, I felt supported and I felt independent and I felt that I could really go forth in my life and take chances and opportunities. So when I got to Northwest or to Stonehill College and thought about joining ROTC, it really wasn't that difficult for me. I wasn't, you know, as hard as it was to sort of make that commitment as a 18-year-old that I was going to commit my life to 5 or 6 years after I graduated. I felt like I had really very thoughtful input that I learned while I was at Northwest. And so I felt very prepared and I felt like I could reach out to people whenever I needed support in order to make those decisions and make those long-term decisions at that young age. And so that's what my biggest takeaway from Northwest is how strong the faculty and support staff were to helping us all.
Thank you, Mrs. Jordan. Mr. Billington or Mr. Leavitt, would either one of you like to go next answering that question?
Sure. So I would say the piece for me from Northwest was, I'll call it the well-rounded environment that we had there, which focused on, you know, all of you are in athletics. All of us were in athletics at West Point. And that coupled with the focus around academics, because, you know, and for all of us, we did well in our post, you know, careers at Northwest Catholic. But I remember my physics teacher, Miss Kenora, who was really like, I mean, it was at first, it was a terror being in that class, but she was the one who got me focused on science. I never would have went into engineering. I never would have done the things that I did. So the inspiration and the impact that, you know, as Katherine mentioned, some of the faculty and staff have on you and your path as you leave Northwest Catholic are truly impactful over the long term. The other thing that I would say is the fact that, you know, a school that has faith and Christianity. You know, I'm not Catholic, but you saw I did all of the stuff, and that has stayed with me through my whole life, right? And although I'm Baptist by faith, I'm very involved in my faith, and it's an important piece of making me a well-rounded person. So I would say that my Northwest Catholic experience has helped me to become the full, broad person, you know, having fun, which is a big piece of the time at Northwest Catholic that I remember the most. But also, too, it's all of those other elements that have helped make me the person I am.
Yeah, I'll build on that. I completely agree with the earlier comments. Two things come to mind. One is the academic expectations for the students at Northwest. And this was true of all of my education throughout my career, is try to find a group of people, both professors, teachers, students, that bring out the best in you, right? And that stretch you and help you to understand that where I am, let's say academically or athletically or right now is a bit static, and I can always be stretched out of my comfort zone. And Northwest did that. You know, Courtney mentioned Carol Canora, and she stretched all three of us. We all had her, and she would make us, you know, think hard. But there was language teachers, math teachers, music teachers who stretched you. So the first thing I would say is, you know, as in the way of recommendation, is take chances. I mean, really try to take chances. It's very easy to be comfortable and say, hey, I'm good in math, I'm good in science, that's where I'm going to stick. And not, you know, I had a teacher my sophomore year who'd said, you should take creative writing. And I was like, me, I'm not a creative writer. I'm not that kind of guy. And I write today. I write creatively. I've been published, and I enjoy that process. But I look back to that experience as being very informative to me and helping me to think differently about what I could achieve. And then secondly, I think is just you know, the expectation of hard work, you know, and I go to the track teams, and I know with softball and you know, and other, I mean, the golfing team, the football team, and now you guys have swimming, and which we didn't have then. Yeah. Just great to hear. I love it. But, you know, there were a lot of times where I'm sure all three of us were out there in our respective sports, and we're having a hard time, you know, going forward because we wanted to give up and quit. And the coaches said, no, that you're not going to do that. I don't care how hot I ran indoor track and never saw an indoor track until we competed. So the whole time we were here, we were running out in the ice and cold, and the coach just said, that's what we do. So getting out of that zone of this is all I can achieve and put in, and starting to realize that we can actually do much more, that served me very well going on to the later endeavors of my life.
Great, thank you. Charlene, do you want to ask the next question?
Yes. What motivated you to join the military? I'm sorry. Should I repeat that?
No, I heard it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What motivated me to join the military? I would say first, I come from a family. My father was in the military for a short period of time, but I didn't necessarily have this immediate expectation. But I would say the fact that my family did raise me with the value of service, right, and the importance of giving back. Also, which was reinforced at Northwest Catholic, right? And the importance of serving in some way, shape, or form, whether it's in the community or what have you. And also, I found out for me that going to West Point, you get a scholarship. Actually, you get paid while you're there, and you have a job out of college, right? And so if you didn't know, like, so it was like, wow, get paid, got a job. I'm up for that, you know, they're going to put me through school. So that was another piece. And then I would say that the cherry on top was a piece of serving and being able to give back and having that feeling that you're contributing to something bigger than yourself.
So I would say similarly, I grew up the youngest of 4 kids with 3 older brothers, and my father and mother were both in the Navy on active duty, and that's actually how they met. My mother was actually, interestingly, from Hartford. She was an Irish immigrant, and she went to Albertus Magnus to be a teacher. And when she got home to Hartford after graduating, she started to get her teacher certification and said, this is not for me. and she was the first person, the first woman to be in the Naval Officer Candidate School up in Newport. So she was in the first wave class.
That's
Much
great.
to my commission as an ensign, and went off in the Navy and met my father, who was from Texas, a Southern Baptist from Texas. So that was strike number 2 for my grandmother. Flew in, got married, and then they were on active duty, and my father was a carrier pilot. So we had 4 kids in 5 years, and unfortunately my father passed away while on active duty. In those days in the military, when 2 people got married, the woman had to get out of the military. So my mother was a stay-at-home mom when that happened, and we moved back to Connecticut to West Hartford and settled, which is what led my path to St. Thomas the Apostle and then to Northwest. So I always had it in my mind in terms of the military. And when I got to Stonehill, sort of to build on Courtney and Wilder, you know, their experience with Miss Kenora might have been a little different than mine, as they ended up as engineers and at places like West Point and Embry-Riddle. I myself was an American Studies major, so my time with Miss Kenora was probably not quite the same as theirs. Let's just talk, it was a survival mode, and if you can get through that when you do not have a math or a STEM mind, I can tell you how to get through life. So at any rate, when I got to Stonehill and I checked out ROTC, and you know, I really didn't have a strong ambition to do something different than being in the military, and the opportunity presented itself, and you know, it just worked out, and I enjoyed being part of the Corps of Cadets there. And I said, you know, I always called myself closet ROTC. I'd be up and do all my ROTC things and be back to my dorm room before anyone else even got out of bed at noon. So it worked out really well. I played sports up there while I was doing ROTC in a lot of clubs, and I was able to juggle it all and then go on active duty. And my opportunity to serve and continue to be with quality people really was what I was looking for. And it sort of built on my time with great people at Northwest, and you know, my long-term memories of being in the military was, of course, serving my country, but the people and the quality of people that I met and the sacrifice that I saw is by far the greatest thing I ever did with my life in terms of enriching myself and learning and growing and stretching, as Courtney had said.
Yeah, and just quickly, my motivation was money.
And that.
My family didn't have much. In fact, I was one of those stretch students at Northwest that we weren't sure we were going to get to the next year. And by the time I was a junior, my parents wanted me to go to college, of course, and I was, you know, like most of us at Northwest at the time, were motivated to go to college, but we didn't have any money. And my mother had read about these military scholarships that were coming out, and try to compete for one of those. And I actually did not get one straight out of high school. I was made an alternate. They had more applicants that were qualified, and they had money to hand out. So I rolled into Syracuse University thinking I was going to be there for a year. And what happened was that when people started giving up their scholarships because either decided to go the Navy Army route or just not accept the scholarship, a bunch of us bumped up. Plus, they needed aerospace engineers at the time, so they reached down into the list and grabbed a bunch of us. So after 2 months of being on campus without any money, thinking I'll go for a year and then I'm going to go home and work, and I'll go for a year and I'll keep doing that. The commander of our detachment pulled 3 of us in and said, "Congratulations, here's your 4-year ride through this school." And it changed my life. It completely changed my life. I would not. I mean, I would have graduated in 8 years, perhaps, but I would not have had the great experience that I had. So that was mainly it. The nice thing about that was I had spent 2 months as a non-scholarship student going, you know, I kind of like this cadet corps. This is awesome. And the values that they espouse, the idea of camaraderie, the fact that we were all trying to be, you know, better students, better human beings, at the same time preparing ourselves to serve and lead as officers to be, just really sung to me. So by the time I got the scholarship, I was fully on board, and then spent the next 4 years, you know, just trying to be the best officer candidate I could be. So it was great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Aidan, do you have a question?
Yeah, so this question specifically for Mr. Billington. What was your experience at West Point like, and would you recommend it to high school students who are considering it today?
Yeah, so I would say the first year is super hard. It's kind of like pledging to a fraternity for a year, where you actually get hazed quite a bit. But, you know, I would say, you know, and people have asked me this over and over, would you do it again if you had the opportunity? And I would absolutely, without reservation, do it over and over again. The camaraderie that Wilder mentioned that you get, you know, from the standpoint of when you're together with people who have a similar interest and bond, is tremendous. You know, I mean, my classmates are godparents of my kids. You know, I go on holidays with many of my classmates from West Point. I served with them on active duty, in combat, so on and so forth. When I was in Iraq, you know, I'm traveling around Iraq and boom, I see, you know, 2 of my classmates from West Point who then helped my unit. So, and I would almost say similarly to my bond at Northwest, I still get together. There's a group of like 7 or 8 of my classmates. About 2 years ago, we decided to start having conference calls and just getting together to fellowship, right? And, you know, provide support to each other. One of our classmates had passed. And so we always talked about, you know, our bond and how we supported and remember, you know, this classmate who has passed on. And so when I think about West Point, great academics, like I said, you get paid. The exposure and things that you get while you're there. I mean, I got to drive tanks. I fired artillery weapons. You know, I didn't go into any of that stuff. I went into the supply field because I said, no, what can I do? Which thing could I perhaps use when I graduate? Not sure that, you know, unless I decide to stay in firing tanks, don't know that I'm going to do that after I get out, right? So I went into logistics and I studied that both at West Point through my time on active duty. And that was my first job, even getting out. And the, you know, the reputation of serving your country, no matter what institution you go to, serves you well, I would say, post getting out of college or in your active duty service. So it created a number of opportunities for me if I wanted to stay in and make it a career or get out and pursue something else.
All right, thank you.
What advice would you give people contemplating time in the service upon graduation?
My advice would be absolutely go for it. I think it makes sense if that's an interest of yours that you should, you know, a great opportunity is to reach out to, you know, the alumni network from Northwest and talk to different people about their experiences. There's a lot of different ways to join the military. There's a lot of options. ROTC is one way, you know, going to a service academy as Courtney did at West Point is another, or the Air Force Academy or Annapolis. For some people, they're not ready for college, so they might enlist in one of the 4 or 5 branches that are out there. But I think it's important to really look at all your options and make sure you fully understand, you know, what's the best path for you and pursue that before, you know, just making a snap decision. I don't think I'd recommend just walking into a recruiter's office and signing up without telling your parents or some important people in your lives. But the sky's the limit, really. And coming out of Northwest, I think anybody who has an interest should really pursue it, because I think you all are prepared really well to take on challenges like that. Just do your homework before you do it, but don't be afraid. I mean, it really is, as you're learning today, is the most instrumental thing that happened in my life. And I would do it over again times 10. And, you know, I've got 2 children who are in college right now. I'd love to see them take part in this type of thing, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely and build on that a little bit. I think, first off, you guys are much more educated and worldly than we probably were at the time. So you know, I'm going to start with that assumption that you know how to run some of this stuff down. But secondly, really understand it. Let's say I want to get into the military, or I'm thinking about doing that. Understand all the sources of military service, right? The Coast Guard is often forgotten about, but it's a great way to serve, especially in a peacetime environment, which we haven't had for a while, but we will get back to that. Doing drug interdiction and that kind of stuff could be a great way to go. When I was in the service, I had a great experience as an aircraft maintenance officer, but I always envied the parajumpers. At the time, there was no officer slot. So, had I come out of college going, I'm going to be a parajumper, and they would have said, doing pararescue, they'd said, yeah, that's great, but we don't have an officer billet anywhere in the United States Air Force. They do now. And later on in life, I became a paramedic. So that was obviously something that I enjoyed doing. But number one is, I think, research your services. Know what the Navy does, know what the Marine Corps does, know what the Army and the Air Force, really understand what their mission is, so that you don't get in there and you might be a little surprised going, gee, I didn't really realize the Navy was out at sea for 10 months out of a year, so you have to be prepared for that. I think secondly, then, if you're interested in an area, like Courtney was talking about supply, that can be a really awesome area. Logistics, it's a lot of moving parts, a lot to master. Infantry, if you're going to be a submarine member, just understand specifically what those jobs are. I think that's important. And again, talk to alumni, talk to other vets who've been there and can say, what's it like to be inside of a steel hull, can for 8 months at a time? If you're a submariner, and some people love it, but some people might say, that's not for me. So really do your homework. And then you might be like me, where I was thinking I'll be an aerospace engineer for the Air Force, and then I'll go to pilot training later on. And the Air Force said, that's terrific. You're going to become an aircraft maintenance officer. And it was a completely different thing. I wound up really being an infantry officer for all intents and purposes. That's kind of the model that when I try to explain what I did in the Air Force, and I loved it. It was fantastic. So you've got to be flexible. And then I guess the last thing is understand the culture. It's as Katherine was saying, it's a different culture. Anyone can do it. I don't think there's any reason why anybody who's not properly motivated and interested can't do it, but it is a different culture, and you have to be prepared for that so that you can find your way and you can flourish in the environment.
Yeah. The only other thing I would add is the discipline associated with the military was important. So if I think about it, part of, I was kind of like a class clown a little bit back when I was at Northwest Catholic. So there were times where perhaps maybe I wasn't as disciplined as I could be. And actually the military helped to kind of round out some of those things for me as well, to provide a bit more structure that actually helped to accelerate maybe some hidden talents that I might have had. To combine with some of the other aspects. So as it's been said, it's not for everybody, but also too, if you don't necessarily know exactly what you want, it also gives you an opportunity to investigate and explore a lot of things. I truly felt like my time in the military was an adventure. And also, even when I started my family, my wife and I, we were going off to places. We had no relatives. No, first time we're like, hey, why not? Let's try it. So it truly, does allow you to explore different things at a very early time in your life.
Thank you.
Charlene?
Yes. I have another question. What is your favorite memory from your time serving?
So I'll say I was had the opportunity to be assigned over in Europe, and my first duty assignment was the 2nd Armored Division Forward, which was way up on the North Sea. For anybody who served in Europe, when your car finally got shipped over from the United States, it came in through Bremerhaven, and my post was right next to Bremerhaven. So it was cold, and it was hours away from any other Americans. So I really had to learn how to navigate my way in a land that only spoke German, and I didn't speak any German because I took Spanish at Northwest. So that was, not good planning on my part. But while I was there, the Berlin Wall actually came down. If you all remember your history now, Ronald Reagan tear down that wall. Well, I had the opportunity to actually be there when that happened, and we used to be able to take the duty train into East Germany. We'd have to wear our uniforms. We'd have to get on a train with what was called flag orders, which were these carefully prepared documents that if there was anything wrong, when you went through checkpoint Alpha or checkpoint Bravo or finally checkpoint Charlie, they could seize the flag orders and stop you from going, and Russians who had machine guns with them could detain you if they wanted. So I had the opportunity to go into Berlin multiple times prior to the wall falling, and then when the wall actually fell, all the checkpoints went away, and I actually ran the Berlin Marathon for the first year that they had it, and it went through the Brandenburg Gate into East Berlin. So it was almost like running from a colored movie into black and white, where they were still living in a pre-World War II pockmarked, no signage, no colors, no nothing, and they were amazed elderly people watching this massive humanity run through their streets that they'd never seen before from the West, and they were beating pots and pans and shaking coffee beans because they couldn't believe what they were seeing. So it was really pretty cool to be part of a history, of a moment in history like that.
Thank you so much.
For me, I would say it's not necessarily one specific event, but I would say it's the relationships, it's leading teams. My exposure in the military to be able to lead teams, be with a group of people with a common mission. We had fun, we worked hard, but we played hard. We had just great times that I remember, clowning around, but then also doing some very, very serious, intricate things. And it was really all about the people and that exposure to the importance of, serving others and the relationships that you get and the bonds that you build. They're the things that excite me today. I've been out of the military 30 years and I still utilize a lot of those same examples in the same way that I lead the organization I have the privilege to lead today, based on some of those learnings and, things that I want to create, if you will, in the work environment that I am in today.
Yeah, I agree. I'll build on that. I was thinking about the question while I was listening to the responses, and I think in general is the great impact that I had on so many people around me. And again, I'm not saying that I'm special. I think everyone does, but especially if you're in a leadership position, you don't realize the impact you have on people. And once in a great while, someone will say, you did this or you acted this way, and it affected me profoundly, which means there's just dozens and dozens of people that have where you make a big impact in their lives. And so I think that was probably the thing that I felt very humbled by and felt very responsible for. The fact that my decisions and my choices and my actions could have, and often did, have a profound effect on hundreds of people. And if I got it wrong, it had, deleterious effects. I will tell one quick story, though, that just before I left, I was working on the flight line. We were having a massive aircraft, probably 150 aircraft were flying a mission, all to land at Nellis Air Force Base together. And in order to support that event, they were coming from bases all over the United States, and they were going to fly a mission at one of our ranges, land there, and then redeploy. And that landing and recovery took the orchestration of quite honestly, several thousand people. And we pulled these young troops in from all over the country just to get there for about a week and a half, serve, and then go home. And they would be placed in these different functions. I was the ramp, we called it a ramp rat. Somebody kind of oversaw the operation to make sure everything was okay. And this F-15E Strike Eagle, 2 pilots, comes in, lands, catches on fire on landing, taxis in, ignites, and these 4 young troops that had, 2 stripes, they come from North Dakota, Florida, different parts of the country. They immediately grabbed the fire extinguisher, and I was standing just a few feet away from them, and they rush in and start fighting the fire. They had no protective gear on. And they're doing what they're supposed to do. The pilot slid off the radome and ran off, which is what they're supposed to do. And my troops are in there, they're putting the fire out, and I'm behind him. And I remember grabbing a guy's uniform and pulling him back because he was getting too close. And the fire went out, and we pulled back, and then it ignites again, and they go right back in. I didn't say anything to them. They went right back in. They're fighting the fire. By this time, the fire department shows up, the base fire department. They take over and fully extinguish the airplane. And I looked at these 4 guys. I put them up for an award, which they didn't get, unfortunately. But we put them up, and I said to the colonel, when I was telling the story, I said, these guys didn't think a second about what they should or shouldn't do. They went right into harm's way. They didn't know each other. I mean, they'd all come together from different places. And that kind of dedication and discipline and loyalty to the mission and to each other, most importantly to each other, had a profound effect on me. I remember thinking, if any of those people walk into my door today and ask for a favor, I'm dropping what I'm doing, and I'll help them out any way I can. And that's the thing, when you talk about what does the military mean to me, that's what it meant to me, was that kind of, I can count on you, you can count on me, and I'll never let you down.
Thank you.
That's really powerful. Thank you, Mr. Leavitt.
You're welcome.
I think we're almost out of time. I personally had just one question. You know, obviously 2020 has been quite a year in the United States. Lots transpired. I wonder if each of you could give your best advice based on, you know, both your military experience, but just your life experience, your best advice that you would share with our students who, you know, who we will hope become our future leaders.
So I guess my advice would be, you know, be honest. Be honest with yourselves, what your capabilities are, stretch yourself. Don't be afraid. I'll say this, you know, I think we've all got some really interesting experiences, and this has been a real treat to catch up with my classmates who I really didn't know a lot about your backgrounds, guys, after we graduated. So pretty cool, pretty impressive men right here, I can tell you that much. Right, but I'll also say this, what you guys have gone through this year, honestly, it's a lot. It's you know, I can't imagine our high school experiences when I think back about all the neat things that we did, the memories that we have, the awards that we got, the celebration we got to experience. That's what you all are good right now. And if you can come out of this and still have these connections with your classmates and your teachers and church and your God and everything, be proud of yourselves. And that's a you know, hopefully 30 years from now you'll be on this on the stage and not on a Zoom call in the middle of a pandemic, and you'll be talking about this, and it'll be so foreign to the you know, the Northwest Catholic students, and they're going to be like, a pandemic, I read about that. I saw, someone taught me that. It's in a history book now. So, you know, we're going to get through this, guys, and it's going to be your generation that's going to make sure that, you know, this doesn't happen again, and that if something similar happens, that you navigate us, you be the leaders, you be the people that we look up to. Do not underestimate yourselves. You guys got it going on.
Thank you, Katherine.
I guess to add to that, I would say don't put limits on yourself, because sometimes people will try to do that, right? People will say, oh, you can't do this or you can't do that, or I don't know, you don't do well in a certain class, right? And then you find out, you know, that you're going to MIT like Wilder, or you're, you know, doing tremendous things, right? I would say you've got so much ahead of you that, you know, don't limit yourself. You've got a great foundation. You know, Northwest Catholic gives you a great foundation that I think you should not take for granted, to do different things that you want. Also, don't feel like you have to have everything figured out either. Like at this stage, don't feel like, oh, I'm going to go. None of us could say, you heard our stories. I didn't say, oh, I'm going to West Point, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I didn't even know what West Point was until I was probably a junior or senior and I went into a college fair, right? So like those other things, don't also feel like you have to have it so mapped out, because your life is going to be a series of adjustments and course corrections. You're going to do different things. You're going to get exposed to different areas where you find out what you're passionate about and what inspires you and where you grow and what things you do well. And I would say follow that. Follow the things that, you know, are your underlying passions. And make sure along the way that whatever you're passionate about can also help you pay the bills as well. Otherwise, though, us parents end up having to kind of help out along the way.
Yeah, I agree with all that. That's great advice. I mean, you know, like as I said before, definitely stretch yourself. Try new things. You're going to get a lot of advice from a lot of people our age or even younger who are going to try to tell you what you should be doing. And I would say listen to the advice that you seem to hear more often and more frequently, because it's usually grounded in a lot of experience. So stretch yourself. Be ready to fail and fail. If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. Okay, and I suffered from that a lot in my early years. I've adopted this mentality that I need to be back on my heels the majority of my time. If I'm not back on my heels, then I'm probably not involved in things that really stretch me. So definitely try to do that. I think this is a very important time to be an American. So if you choose to be in the military or not be in the military, I think the safety and security of this country, I don't think has ever been more tenuous. And I don't, I know for me personally, I've been I've tried to adopt a polite company attitude. I speak up a lot now. And especially as a veteran, you know, and with my two colleagues here, we worked long and hard to defend the country. And I don't think sitting quietly and not leading, whether you be in the military or out of the military, is an option, especially for you three today. You've got to get out there. You've got to make your opinions known. You've got to be honest. That was great advice. You've got to be truthful. You've got to be courteous. You've got to be compassionate. Northwest Catholic gave us, you know, plenty of examples, both from our teachers and from our, honestly, people like Katherine and Courtney, who I got to look, you know, I looked next to me and saw who was sitting next to me and said, wow, I want to be like them. So, you know, you've got the examples there for you. The military is a great place to continue that, but so is the civilian sector, and be leaders and be champions for the America that you're stepping into, because, you know, we fought long and hard and we'll continue to fight long and hard. I mean, when I go in the grave, I'll be done fighting long and hard for this country in any capacity. And I hope you'll do the same.
Yeah. Awesome. Wilder. Yes.
Yeah.
Hope for us.
You got it, Courtney.